nothing like ice cold
in the family refrigerator.
Has the taste you never get tired of. 1/3 more in every single bottle.
Enjoy the lift you get from the great taste of the choice of a new generation.
Hey everybody. So the year is 1985, and times are changing. A turbulent world, a generational clash, and a dramatic upheaval of long-kept ideals and values have created a perfect storm for dramatic and striking shifts in the natural order of things. Chances are being taken, risks are being embraced, and choices are being made that will define the course of an era. In time, we would come to remember this as a profound period of societal development, the impacts of which are still being felt today. Now, in our modern age, one of the most often remembered and often discussed clashes of this bygone era has been the explosive culmination of a century-long cold conflict between two titans of industry who, in the 1980s, revealed their true colors for the first time. This is the story of the Cola Wars. Our story begins long before anyone alive today can remember. In July of 1886, a Georgia pharmacist named John Stith Pemberton completed work on a carbonated tonic he had begun working on earlier in the year, designed to boost energy and relieve headaches. Active ingredients in the drink included cola nuts, an early natural source of caffeine, and leaves of the coca plant, a species of flora universally renowned for containing a tropane alkaloid, commonly known as cocaine. Pemberton had no name for the tonic, but his bookkeeper, a man named Frank Robinson, proposed an alternate title made up of the drink's two main ingredients. Pemberton took a break from the production of his drink, leaving the creation and promotion of Coca-Cola to Robinson, under whom the soda became somewhat popular. In 1892, a businessman and future politician named Asa Griggs Candler officially acquired the Coca-Cola operation from Pemberton, founding the Coca-Cola Company and flipping the switch on large-scale production. But while Coca-Cola was making waves in Georgia, a potential challenger had begun to awaken just a few hundred miles away. 1893, New Bern, North Carolina. Caleb Bradham, another pharmacist, develops a formula for his own tonic, which he calls Brad's Drink, this time featuring no cocaine. By 1895, Coca-Cola was being sold in every state across the country, and Brad's Drink wasn't far behind. 1898 saw Bradham alter his drink's name in order to promote its dyspepsia-relieving properties, and with this, Pepsi Cola began to expand production across the US. By the turn of the century, both drinks were seeing celebrity endorsement, wide-scale marketing, and universal acclaim. With this, the combatants are set. The Cola Wars have begun. The early 20th century saw a great deal of development. Merchandising and large-scale advertising were still in their infancy, but both Coca-Cola and Pepsi Cola were eager to set a trend. Coca-Cola, in the pursuit of creating a more healthful drink, removed cocaine from their traditional recipe. For close to 3 decades after this point, Coca-Cola would dominate the soda industry. Beginning worldwide production in the early 1910s and designing the Contour soda bottles soon after, it was clear that Coca-Cola's head start on Pepsi was a killer advantage. While Pepsi continued to steadily expand throughout the United States, Coca-Cola had already carved out its niche and was burning ahead as the obvious frontrunner. Coca-Cola's marketing scheme heavily focused on projecting an image of wholesomeness and values, a powerful advertising angle that Pepsi struggled to match. In 1923, Coca-Cola, having been recently acquired by an investment group for a staggering $25 million, took on businessman Robert W. Woodruff as its president, where he would serve for the next 60 years. Coincidentally, this same year, likely due to World War I sugar rationing taking a heavier toll on the sugar-laden Pepsi, the Pepsi Cola Company filed for bankruptcy. This would not be the last time it did so. The company was sold and landed on its feet, attempting a number of new ventures under new management, but the comparatively tiny Pepsi Cola could not compete with Coca-Cola, a veritable industry giant, which continued worldwide expansion even as Pepsi barely scraped by. Eventually, in 1931, Pepsi would file once again for bankruptcy. But before this point, full ownership of the company was offered to Coca-Cola on 3 separate occasions. The company declined the sale each time. As Coca-Cola would soon find out, this was a major mistake. By 1931, Pepsi seemed to be on its last legs, but in this case, appearances were deceiving. After its second bankruptcy, Pepsi Cola was purchased again, this time by a man named Charles Guth, owner of the massive Loft Candy Company, which was at the time the largest in the world, and had recently dropped its support of Coca-Cola over financial disputes. As the United States began to exit the Great Depression and Coca-Cola became confident in its overwhelming lead, Pepsi came out swinging. 1933 saw Pepsi double the size of its bottles while still selling them for an affordable price. This attempt at undercutting Coca-Cola's dominance was largely successful, allowing Pepsi to creep up on Coca-Cola's massive market share for the first time in decades, even as Coca-Cola began to expand even further overseas. Competitors more so now than ever, the two companies continued to develop on their cutting-edge marketing strategies in an effort to outmaneuver each other. Advertising jingles, celebrity endorsements, and a myriad of other methods were all put into effect. But the advent of World War II directed their attention elsewhere. Both companies attempted to market themselves as allies of the war effort and defenders of the American way, while simultaneously making headway into companies they hadn't previously capitalized on. And as the war ended and the United States entered a new economic boom, Pepsi and Coca-Cola only grew more popular. By this point, the two brands had begun to differ in their marketing styles, appealing to distinctly different audiences in an effort to target unexploited populations. Coca-Cola remained the wholesome family drink, a reminder of the values and traditions people of the era were desperate to have. In the past, the company, which had now begun to market itself as Coke, had famously used Santa Claus as an advertising icon, and Coke was eager to keep up its appearances. Pepsi, on the other hand, took a more unusual approach. In stark contrast to Coke's methods, Pepsi's ad campaigns began overwhelmingly to focus on taking risks and being on the cutting edge, the drink of the youth, the beverage of the future. Pepsi would maintain this outward appearance for the foreseeable future, and further deepen the growing dichotomy between the warring corporations. The two continued to expand, acquiring new celebrity spokespeople and new worldwide locations on the daily. The developing Soviet Union appeared, to the companies, a promising new market as both rushed to stake out their claim. In 1959, then Vice President Richard Nixon convinced Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev to drink Pepsi during their infamous kitchen debate, and Pepsi would, in later years, secure a majority of the foreign soda production in the USSR. The companies continued their expansion throughout the late 50s into the early 70s, and yet, Coke still controlled close to half the market. Pepsi would need to do something truly remarkable to turn the tables. Something that could bring the Cola Wars to a dramatic crescendo. The year is now 1975, and Pepsi has a plan. It's called the Pepsi Challenge. In public locations all across the US, Pepsi sales representatives set up small tasting booths open to the general populace. The promotion is simple. Passers-by are free to take a sample of 2 unlabeled soda cups, 1 Coke, 1 Pepsi. After this, the taster declares which soda they preferred, and finally, the representative reveals which soda was which. The results of the challenge are reported on nationally and heavily promoted in Pepsi marketing. The winner of the taste test is Pepsi, and by a significant margin. This event is what many consider to be the spark that set off the most brutal era of the Cola Wars, the late 70s to the early 90s. You see, over the past 2 decades, Coke had been steadily losing ground. Likely as a result of the massive cultural upheavals of the 60s and 70s, Coke's old-fashioned feel-good image began to falter in the eyes of consumers, and by the early 80s its market share had dropped by over half. Taking advantage of this, Pepsi used its youthful and rebellious public persona to frame itself as the choice of a new generation, spurred on by its early success in the Pepsi Challenge. For the first time in a century, the two companies were truly neck and neck, and this only spurred further fierce competition over the next decade. Both Coke and Pepsi entered a period of heavy marketing, trying to recapture the interest of a new generation. The airwaves became a battleground, and neither was afraid to spend big on celebrity endorsements. 1983 saw Michael Jackson promoting Pepsi in a TV spot, while fictional TV personality Max Headroom became a Coke spokesman just a few years later. The fires of industry were burning hotter than ever, and it was clear by now that something had to give. The year is now 1985, and the Cola War is at its peak, and this time, it's Coke that plans to make the first move. Pepsi was finally beginning to outsell Coke in supermarkets across America, and as Robert Goizeta entered office as Coke CEO in 1980, he vowed to make whatever changes necessary to reverse this. The problem, Coke's researchers believed, was flavor. Despite the fact that, in all honesty, Coke and Pepsi were almost indistinguishable besides for sweetness, Coke's R&D department began work in the early 80s on something they called Project Kansas. The group, headed by executives Sergio Zyman and Brian Dyson, worked to formulate a redesigned, sweeter recipe for the century-old Coca-Cola mixture. The results of Project Kansas went public in 1985, and it was called New Coke. Coke's management refused the idea of marketing New Coke as a separate product, and as such, on April 23rd of 1985, New Coke was launched with great fanfare as a full replacement for the classic Coke flavor. Controversy surrounded this change, but Goizeta refused to consider New Coke anything but a guaranteed success.
Is a more harmonious flavor.
You're a pretty good copywriter, Roberto.
And initial figures seemed to support this claim. Customers were buying New Coke in about the same volume as they were Old Coke, but this quickly began to crumble. What Coke failed to realize was that in the Cola War, taste had never really mattered. The Pepsi challenge was more of a PR stunt than anything else, and Coke had been doing fine for decades earlier without the formula change. It would be misleading to say that the taste difference between Pepsi and Coke is any more than a barely noticeable blip. No, what kept the fires of the Cola War burning was sheer brand loyalty, the ability to look at two arbitrarily different choices and defend one of them with your life. And this was something that Coke had just upset the balance of. Backlash against New Coke's replacement of Old Coke was swift and violent. Angry calls, letters, and demonstrations were seen at an almost unprecedented scale, many customers even more upset considering Coke's outward image of commitment to tradition. Particularly in the South, angry Coke consumers viewed the change as an infringement on their customs, with one Alabama journalist bizarrely attempting to link New Coke with Goizeta's Cuban heritage. New Coke was quickly turning into a disaster, and Pepsi was eager to capitalize on it. While Coke's figures plummeted and its executives scrambled to find a solution, Pepsi put out marketing material designed to highlight the massive failure, taking out full-page ads to proclaim what they saw as their victory in the Cola Wars. But Coke would not take this laying down. In what seemed to be the obvious course of action, the Coca-Cola company simply reintroduced the original Coke flavor, marketing it as Coca-Cola Classic, alongside New Coke, to remain available for the foreseeable future. The company hoped this would bring back longtime fans and supporters of the beverage, and help assuage public concerns. But could something this simple really work? Well, yeah. The re-release of Coke Classic was the massive success that New Coke never was. Within weeks, Coke Classic was massively outselling New Coke, and this led to a rather unintended side effect. Astoundingly, Coca-Cola was doing better than ever. Through some strange twists of logic, customers that had previously ceased their consumption of Coke suddenly remembered their passion for it following its re-release, and amazingly, in the aftermath of the disaster that was New Coke, the Coca-Cola company was back on the rise. And with this, the Cola Wars began to simmer down. In the decades following the war's climactic highlight, the ongoing battle would persist quietly, in the background and largely out of the public eye. After its strange reversal of fortune, Coke again managed to capture the market lead over Pepsi, something it hasn't lost to this day. Both companies continued to branch out, diversify, and expand, trying new marketing strategies and promotion methods, but always they kept their flagship beverages at the head of their enterprises. Ironically, in the time since, Coke and Pepsi have become even more indistinguishable. Flavors and advertising styles becoming so homogenous that, more so now than ever, the only thing truly keeping the war going is their customers' strange fealty to their respective brand. Today, Coke remains on top, controlling a portion of the soda market considerably greater than that of Pepsi. Although if we look deeper, we'll find that Pepsi is, in actuality, the more profitable, thanks to its numerous snack subsidiaries. And yet, the Cola War continues to rage on to this day. And it makes you wonder, have we gained something? Have we learned anything meaningful from this? Well, probably not, but it's something to think about the next time you crack open a can. Thanks for watching.